right. Let's see here. Normally we can see how many folks are rolling in.
I can see it.
Just gonna try something here. So you can see participants rolling in.
Yeah, it says 68 on mine right now.
Okay. Well, we will give folks just a couple more minutes to start coming in, and then we'll kick this thing off.
Cool.
All right. Yep, now I got it back. Good deal.
So are they on here now? Can they hear us now or no?
Oh yeah, they can hear
All
everybody.
right.
Everybody who's showing up can hear every word you're saying. So,
All right. So I can't yell at you.
well, you can. I probably deserve it for some reason or another.
Oh, buddy.
You could probably yell at me for 10, 20 people maybe.
That's hey. I got enough people that want to yell at me. It's okay.
Well, we are a couple minutes into this. We still got some people rolling in, but we're not going to get to the best parts here for a few minutes anyways, because I'm just going to do an introduction and we will go from there. But just want to thank everybody for showing up this evening. I think this is our 5th hunt class that we've had now. We always have a really good turnout. It always ends up being a fun evening. Lots of great information when we got folks like Mr. Jace Bauserman as special guests, experts in their field. So we are here to talk about pronghorn. First, I'll introduce myself. My name is Josh Dalkey. I am the content director at HuntStand. I'm a content creator and editor and guy who wears many hats at HuntStand. But I'm also very much in love with pronghorn hunting. This is something that started for me probably 10 or 12 years ago. And once I started, I told myself that I have to go every single year. So I'm really excited for the class tonight. I know I'm going to learn a lot from Jace myself. So it's going to be a sweet evening. When it comes to HuntStand, a lot of you are already familiar with HuntStand. But if you're not, it is actually the #1 hunting and land management app. We have more users combined than any other app across our tiers, our free tier. And then we've also got Pro and Pro Whitetail. Pro Whitetail is our highest tier of the app that has the most features, from more detailed map layers to a whitetail activity forecast to the first ever nationwide rut map broken down to a county level. Lots of great features for whitetail hunters in HuntStand Pro Whitetail, and I can imagine that a lot of people who are showing up here this evening are whitetail hunters first and foremost. That is our core audience, but we know that we also have a lot of Western hunters and Eastern hunters who love to go out West and dream about doing it every year. So if you're not so much into the whitetails and you're more of a Western hunter, then I encourage you to at least check out HuntStand Pro Whitetail, HuntStand Pro. It is worth every cent, and it's going to give you nationwide property information and some really great map layers and tools to allow you to map out your hunt from start to finish. And it's the best, really the best bang for your buck, especially for property information for all 50 states. No other competitor tops us for what you get for the price. It's $29.99 retail, but we have a lot of deals, so pay attention and you can probably score an even better deal on it. So the pronghorn, it is an iconic big game animal. I would argue that it's the most iconic, and I'm sure Jace might agree with me.
The symbol of the American West, man.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people really think about mule deer and elk, but when you spend time out west, you realize that the pronghorn is so unique. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it is actually totally unique to any other animal on the planet.
Yeah, man. And I'm so glad to hear you keep saying the word pronghorn because, I think it's important to point out that they're not an antelope, they're not related to the antelope species in Africa. I just got back from there and actually got a chance to talk to a lot of those guys out there because, they have the understanding that we have an antelope and we really don't. We have a pronghorn. They're really their own deal. I mean, their closest living relative is actually the giraffe. And when you take a good look at a pronghorn, I mean, you look at its neck and you look at even some of its facial features, the elongated snout, some of those things. I mean, that you can see that there. So they're just super, super unique. And just such an incredible animal to hunt, man.
They are, yeah, and it's funny that you say that about the giraffe because when you take the sheath off the horn,
Yep,
it actually looks like a giraffe almost with what's underneath. So
it absolutely does.
I can see that connection there. But we're singing our praises about pronghorn and plenty of reasons to do so. But we're here to talk about how to learn about these species to hunt them. And that leads me to Mr. Jace Bauserman, who's already said a few words. He is a HuntStand pro contributor, has been for a long time, loyal HuntStand user and advocate, all around content creator with a great social media following. He's a writer, he's an author. This dude wrote, I don't know if I should say the book, but maybe the book, but at least a book on pronghorn hunting that I really encourage you to check out after this. You can get it on Amazon, right?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way, like I've thrown links up on my social media and stuff like that, but the easiest way is just to go to Amazon and just type in Jace Bauserman into the search bar, and it'll pull up all my books. And that's one of the first ones that you're going to see. It's actually for being such a niche animal, it's been a real popular book. It's an easy read. It's just kind of a quick, hard hitting tutorial, a lot of journal entry type stuff that I did over the years, and I know that I've gotten a lot of good feedback on it that's really helped people that are coming west, even for the first time to hunt them, or seasoned guys that have come out here a few times.
Heck yeah, man. And I would have to say that out of all my experiences just hunting, well, all around North America, multiple different species, etc., there are so many ways that the pronghorn doesn't get enough credit. And for that matter, man, I'd have to argue that relative to any other species, there might be fewer pronghorn experts or experienced pronghorn hunters than maybe any other species because even with the sheep, you have like these cult fanatic followings and these
Oh, for
organizations
sure.
that are dedicated to sheep hunting. A lot of those people never do a sheep hunt in their life and they're still sheep fanatics. But with the pronghorn, um, man, I would have to say that you could argue you are probably one of the foremost experts of hunting this species than anybody else, at least that I've ever come across. So we're really happy to have you here. And I'm going to kick it over to you for a more formal introduction to yourself.
Yeah, man. I mean, I really appreciate that. I don't know that I don't really consider myself an expert. I just feel blessed to have been able to live in an area to hunt them a lot. I've hunted them in several different states. I've taken over 27 or 28 with archery equipment. I've taken several more with rifle equipment. And one of the things about them, and I think one of the things that I want to say right off the start is you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said that, they are so unique and, they kind of get a bad rap sometimes. And a bad rap, what I mean by that is people will say, well, they're a great introductory animal to Western hunting. And that almost comes across to me as someone who loves them so much and who spent so much time hunting them as like, well, they're easy. And as you know, and anybody that's hunted them knows, especially with archery equipment, they're far from easy. If you can spot and stalk a pronghorn and do a true spot and stalk pronghorn hunt with archery equipment, you can harvest any animal anywhere. I'll stack them up against anything. They're super fast. Their eyesight is ridiculous. Their noses, I'm not going to say they're a whitetail or elk with their noses, but they do use them. And they're just a phenomenal species. And I think what people mean when they say they're a great introductory animal is that because you can come out here and they're so visible, whereas you may go hunt elk in the West on a DIY tag or an easy to draw tag, and you might hunt 10 days and you might see one elk, or you might not see an elk. Whereas pronghorn, because of the habitat and the terrain that they live in, they're easy to see. So they are a great introductory animal to the West in that way, because they are so visible, but it shouldn't be something where it's like, oh my gosh, they're an easy one to go out and get one down and get your feet wet and call it good. Now you're a Western hunter type of deal. So yeah, it's they do kind of get a bad rap in that area. But yeah, man, I mean, I started hunting them in high school with archery equipment, and then I just fell in love with them, and just, learned so much about them, and have harvested them so many different ways. And we're going to talk, about that. But yeah, I think I was trying to figure it out before this, but I've wrote over 500 articles specifically about pronghorn, the book. I've done numerous podcasts. I've had guys out here to do video stuff, follow me around the prairies and stuff like that. So yeah, man, I just love to hunt them. I think they're a super unique species, and they're gorgeous too. Like, you won't find a prettier mount. I mean, and it's not just about that, but I want to be honest. I mean, they make a beautiful mount. I mean, those ebony horns, and they all have different facial markings, and and they also get a bad rap for their meat, man. I mean, they are phenomenal to eat, everyone, if you take care of them properly. We're also going to talk about that and why, they get that branded like, oh, they taste like sage or this or that, or, they're rutted up and you can't eat them. And it's crazy. I have buddies bring them every year, and I'm like, yep, I'll take them. I'll have them fill out the donation tag, and I'll take them because they're just super awesome, man. And so yeah, that's just me in a nutshell. I'm just an outdoor rider who's doing what I love and get to do it for a living, and feel very blessed to be able to do that and work with you guys. You guys have been a great partner, and like Josh said, I'd encourage you guys to take full advantage of the app. It has so many features outside of just navigation and boundaries and things like that. There's so many features that you can use on that app, that I use all the time. I mean, I use them every single time I go out. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, that's me in a nutshell, man.
Right on. Well, hopefully, I'll learn enough tonight so that I can finally take my first goat with archery equipment, because I'm not ashamed to admit that I have bow hunted them with vertical and crossbow 4 different times. And I've definitely had some shot opportunities and some equipment issues, but I've also had a lot of my own faults that hopefully I can learn to solve here in this class tonight. All the pronghorn I've taken have been with a rifle. I love rifle hunting them, but it's one of few animals that I really, really, really love to bow hunt, because it is so intimate, so challenging, and it just forces you to be out there longer. I mean, if you're in an area that has a high density of antelope or pronghorn, and you're out there with a rifle, you know, depending on what your goals are, you can probably shoot one pretty quickly if that's how you want to go about your hunt. And there are easier ways to
Agreed.
win. But I will say, when it comes to going after them with archery equipment, especially if you're doing more than just sitting on a water hole, which I've only done once, I probably would have
Yeah.
shot one by now if I would have sat more water. But I love stalking the things.
So
So
addicting. So addicting.
it is because it's one of few animals, if not the only animal, where you can just go one after the other, and you can go dawn to dusk,
Yep.
and you're always in action if you're in some decent country, which after tonight, hopefully people can find some decent country, use the
Yeah.
HuntStand app, and get out there and have a quality hunt. So let's kick into some of the basics here.
Yeah, man. So, we broke some of this stuff down. When we're talking about habits of pronghorn, you know, I want to kind of take that and say, pattern ability outside of a good water source is, you don't want to spend a lot of time trying to pattern a goat. They are extremely curious creatures. That's one thing that can get them killed with archery equipment. And we're going to talk more about that. But also for people coming out here, when we talk, even elk, I bring a lot of things back to whitetail because, there are so many whitetail hunters. And I'm sure a lot of people, listening right now or watching right now are hardcore whitetail guys. And so, when we talk about whitetails, when we talk about elk, even to a point, like I said, with elk, we talk a lot about food sources. And you're not going to come out here and there's, it's not the clover. You're not gonna have a clover plot. You're not going to have radishes or winter greens or any of that sort of stuff. I mean, prairie grasses, these things can exist on virtually nothing, and they have to face so much in terms of ever changing food sources because everything food source wise is completely predicated on rainfall. And these animals, what I will tell you is when you show up to an area and you're driving county roads, you're driving, two tracks and things like that, where the water can congregate and pool and create, it seems to always stay green. And there's a lot of vine weed and stuff along the road systems out west where antelope live. When you're seeing them in the bar ditches and on the roads, that's usually a sign that it's extremely, extremely dry, because they're coming in to eat where that water has had a chance to pool, and that greenery has gotten, especially vineweed, because it's very full of protein. But when you're not finding them by the roads and you're seeing them out, and they're spending a lot more time in the pastures and things like that, that's because they're finding, a significant amount of good food that is there, that's palatable and that's works really well for them. So focusing on food sources, I don't get super caught up in it. I just pay attention to where I'm seeing them, mostly when I'm driving around taking an inventory of where they are. If there's a lot of antelope congregated in an area, it's because the food there is good. And antelope, I fully believe this. I can't prove this, but I've done enough studying and enough journaling to know these things. I believe they can smell rain. I believe that they will go. Thunderstorms out west are extremely spotty, so it may get an inch of rain over two pastures, over a couple thousand acres, and be completely stone dry in another area that's just, a hop, skip, and a jump adjacent. So those goats will actually move to that greenery. They'll make a quick move, they'll make a jump, they'll head over 3 or 4 pastures. It may be 3 or 4 miles, but if you go out west and you're out there long enough, you will see these antelope. They will go to areas where it has rained, where they can find good food sources. And then there are places where it's available, where agriculture is available. We have some areas here where I hunt, and up north where I hunt with a good buddy, where there's a lot of pivot systems, a lot of alfalfa on pivots and things like that. And it butts right up to good antelope habitat. And those goats will actually kind of push into those areas, and you'll catch them out in, a pivot field, munching on alfalfa and stuff like that, as long as the terrain and landscape is conducive to them, where they can see, where they can get in there and they can eat, and they're not putting themselves in harm's way. They don't like to be around a lot of cover. They're a very open ranging animal. So keep those things in mind when it comes to food sources.
So this is a very common question, and often the first question before people even start to think about habits or how they're going to hunt them, it's
Yeah.
how are they going to get the ability to hunt them? So let's talk about getting a tag.
That's where pronghorn kind of can reign supreme in some areas. Especially out west, obtaining a tag, especially with archery equipment, is not super, super hard. You've just got to pay attention. You've really got to stay. And I say this all the time, and I know that drum gets beaten hard, but you need to spend a lot of time on the state game and web site of the state you're looking to hunt in, so that you can really familiarize yourself with the process. We've wrote articles on it for HuntStand and put that stuff out there. So that's a great resource too. But here in Colorado, like where I live, we have OTC general archery, which means that me as a resident, anybody listening here as a non-resident, there is a smattering of units. I believe, for all of our huntable antelope units, way more than half of them have over-the-counter archery, which means you can show up even during season, even once season's kicked off, and you can go to Walmart and you can purchase a tag. Colorado is kind of unique in that way. And then we do have some draw units, of course. I hunted one of those draw units last year. But over the years, I mean, I killed 23 antelope in 23 consecutive years with archery equipment on an OTC archery tag. So it's a very doable thing. As you move into rifle hunting, the draw can get a little bit more difficult, but you're still in most units not looking at sheep type odds or even premium elk type draws. Most of the time, 4, 5, 6 points is going to get you a really good tag wherever you're at. Now there are exceptions to that rule. Like last year, I burned 23 points. I just, had 23 points because I'd hunted them for archery for 23 years, and I picked a unit that took 16 points, and I had an awesome hunt. It was amazing. But then there's also landowner tags. That's something that people need to keep in mind. A lot of landowners, especially out west, are not a huge fan of pronghorns simply because they are a little bit hard on fences, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but they are in direct competition with their cattle. And so these guys will get landowner tags. Most of them have no interest in hunting them, but they can make a little bit of money on those tags, and they can help keep their antelope herd population in check. So landowner tags are something that you really need to keep an eye on. And a lot of states, Colorado included, have extended doe seasons. Excuse me, a few years ago, our DOW did a pretty intensive study and figured out we had way too many does. I don't believe that's the case anymore. In fact, I'm kind of anti-wanting that extended doe season to go away. But there are lots of opportunities to be able to hunt pronghorn out west without going, oh my gosh, I'll get to do it in 7 years, or I got to apply in this. I encourage you to apply in multiple states, of course, if you can, so that when your number comes up, you can have one of those tags. But in the meantime, you can find some OTC units, OTC areas with caps. And all that means is there's over-the-counter tags available, but they go on sale on a certain day or over a period of days. And once those tags are gone, they're gone. So they're not OTC an unlimited number. There's a capped number that biologists set that each state follows. So, that's kind of the breakdown on the tag system. But it's very, very, very reasonable to get a tag. And, if you're looking at the costs of elk tags and even mule deer tags in relation to pronghorn tags, you're going to find out that pronghorn tags are a little less expensive, especially in terms of elk. Elk tags, non-residents, are creeping up into the $1,000 mark, 800, 1,000, 1,200, 1,600. It's getting kind of crazy out there. But antelope, that cost is still attainable. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Jace, you may have covered this. I was trying to address some questions, and also we had some issues in the chat that I was trying to get working. It looks like it's working now. So everybody feel free to weigh in on the chat. If you have any questions, we'll try to answer them. And if we don't get them answered here, we will respond to them once this class is over. We'll have a follow-up email that goes out and whatnot, and we'll get back to you guys to answer those questions. And we'll cover some at the end as well. But we also got Will Cooper on here doing a live chat, so he'll help answer the questions that he can. But getting back to what you're saying about tags, did you talk about kind of the difference in expectations on an easy draw unit versus what we would consider a limited draw or trophy unit?
Yeah. So, antelope are incredibly hard to judge. They really are. Anybody that's hunted them knows that. The difference between a 75-inch goat and an 80-inch goat, you really start splitting hairs. But the thing to understand about that is, your more limited tags, they're limited for a reason. Just like the tag that I hunted in Gunnison, Colorado last year. That tag, you were looking for an 80-inch buck. You were looking for an 80-inch or over type buck, or a real freak buck. That unit was known for some really weird genetics, which I was all about. But when you come out west, I want to encourage everybody, if you're coming out here on an OTC tag or a tag that took you a year, maybe 2 years to draw, it was a very easy tag to obtain, or super easy in which you just went and bought it. Keep your expectations in check. And what I mean by that is, look for an antelope with horns over the ears, and that gets a curl, has some prong. And if that's something, now if you have standards that you're like, nope, I want a monster or nothing at all, that's up to you. I always tell people, do what you do. But like I said, I've taken 23 of them in a row with a bow in Colorado, and I've taken punch in other states too. And even here now, I was out scouting the other day, and I know what types of bucks are here. I know an 80-inch buck here is attainable even in these OTC units, but I know that most likely I'm going to find something in that 65 to 70-inch range, and those bucks are going to make me smile ear to ear all day long. And so even after all these years, I don't put a real premium ever with any animal on score. I'm looking for that experience. I'm looking for that stock. I'm looking for that buck that just has found a water source and he can't help himself because they get so honed in on those water sources. So set your goals accordingly, and then do some visiting with people that I always say social media can be a good thing and a bad thing. And a lot of times, I'll find out things about a unit I drew through talking with people on social media, just to get like, what is the general expectation of what bucks in that area are? Here where I'm at, like I was saying, a 70-inch buck is very attainable. When I go hunt up north with some of my buddies, we're looking 55 to 60-inch buck, and we're gonna try to harvest that animal. So just keep it. It's all relative, but find one that's going to make you happy, and go after that antelope, or after that pronghorn, and you're gonna have a much better time, because like Josh said earlier, one of the cool things about them is, if you blow a stock on a 65-inch buck and you're in a good area, chances are there's a 67-inch buck over the next rise. Or you go to an adjacent pasture and there's a bachelor group of about 12, and the biggest one in there is maybe 55 inches, but they're a bunch of curious little youngsters, and they got a little boy band going, and they're really curious. And you're like, man, this is just awesome, because I'm right in amongst them. And that 55-inch buck starts looking pretty good, pretty darn quick. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Jace, I've never dug into the numbers, and maybe you have, and if not, this would be something that I know you're gonna geek out on. But my perception, at least based on my experience, is that it might be more difficult to find a Boone and Crockett pronghorn than just about
The
any other
unicorn.
big game
It's a
species.
unicorn. It's a
It's
unicorn.
I know you've seen a lot more, but I've personally seen, while I've been hunting, um, several hundred bucks now. And I've maybe only seen two that broke the 80-inch mark where I could
Yeah.
confidently say that.
Yeah. And when you see an 80, and let me rephrase that. When you start hunting them and you see a buck that you're like, oh my gosh, he's 80. Okay. So like,
Yep.
but you have to see enough of them first. But you're exactly right, man. Even here where I'm at, and I'm not ashamed to admit this at all. My son, who just turned 18, when he was in 8th grade, he killed an 86-inch pronghorn here with a rifle, in the same unit that I bow hunt in. I had the buck on camera during bow season. Cows moved in, he dispersed. And my son, who is a very patient hunter, very good hunter, he ended up harvesting that buck. That's the biggest buck that I've ever seen in Colorado on the hoof. I know of about 4 or 5 other bucks that I can confidently say were 80. I've killed 78. I've killed 78 and 3/4. I've killed a pile of 75, 76, 77. I've yet to break 80. I had an opportunity last year in Gunnison on that rifle tag, and we had a buck that we knew was probably 81 to 82 confidently, standing right next to the freak buck. And I didn't even blink. I wanted that freak. I wanted that unique, because you really start splitting hairs. But again, that kind of goes back to what we talked about just a little bit ago. It's all personal preference. And for me, is 80 cool? Yeah. I mean, is a booner cool? Well, of course, it's awesome. But when those two bucks were standing there side by side, I didn't even blink. And my buddy, in fact, goes, "You're going to shoot the freak, aren't you?" And I was like, "Oh, absolutely, 100%." And so I shot him, and I had no regrets about it whatsoever, man. So, yeah, that's pretty much with
So,
the scoring.
dude, usually we don't, in fact, in none of the previous hunt classes we've had, and I don't think really in much of any content we've done, have we talked much about scoring or focused a lot on score. But we got a
Yeah,
lot of questions submitted previously during the registration for this class, and also we've got
sure.
them here in the live chat, and rightfully so. People are pretty familiar with how to score a whitetail or a mule deer or even an elk. But a lot of people asking how you measure a pronghorn. Do you happen to have a European mount lying around somewhere that you could grab? And
Yeah, I wish we could do this downstairs because I got all my full mounts downstairs, but let me grab a couple. I got a couple. Let me pop over here real quick.
Cool.
Grab a couple of decent ones.
And while he's grabbing those guys, I will say they are incredibly difficult to judge. And the other thing that I've found in my research, and Jace could tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there are just some areas where it's almost incapable of growing an 80-inch pronghorn, whereas other
It
areas, like,
is. They don't exist in those places.
they don't exist. Like, they could be
Correct.
here, but you would think, like, if you're thinking about whitetails, you could go just about anywhere that there are whitetails, and you could probably eke out a booner hiding somewhere. But with pronghorn, I don't think that's the case. That's been my experience. It's like they're here and they're not here, period.
Right. And I totally agree with that. And that's something I think we do need to touch on because it's important that people understand that it's like a 400-inch bull, right? Or even that's extreme. Let's say a 370 bull.
Yeah.
There's units in Colorado that I promise you that I can hunt and I'll never see a 370 bull. I just won't. They just don't exist in those units. Could there be a unicorn out there? Obviously, there always could be a unicorn out there. But that 80 mark is it's just crazy. And like I said, up north where I hunt, I go up there to hunt with buddies. I go up there because it's fun. I go up there because the topography is much more rolling and broken than it is where I hunt here, where it's very pancake flat with a lot of sage, where spot and stock is still possible. But if you want a really good spot and stock experience, I like to go up north. And I know up there, I know 70 is going to be hard to obtain up there. And that's a fact. I mean, we have seen in several years of hunting, and I got a buddy that lives up there that's as eaten up with it as I am. He thinks one buck in all those years win 80. And I mean, and that's looking at hundreds of bucks every year, right? That's not looking at 20 or 30 bucks a year. That's looking at hundreds of bucks a year over 20 plus years. And that's the type of stuff that, and it's the same here. I'm like I said, I can confidently say I've seen 4, one's dead. But other than that, yeah. But yeah, I did pull down I did pull down several euros here. I've got 4 of them sitting right here. So, we can talk a little bit about that. So one thing to keep in mind, this is a really cool buck. He's one of my favorites. If you guys can see this buck is exceptionally, he's a pretty wide buck. He really splays out. You do not get a width measurement. And guess what? Who cares? If you see a buck that's wide and splays out, oh my gosh, please go shoot that buck because they're so cool. But some things to look for. You can see in this particular buck, especially on this side, he broomed off a little bit right here, but you can see this buck is not super tall. There's not a lot of horn from the base to the prong, and then you can see there's not a ton that goes towering. So, but he does have that huge hook. And that's where you get, a lot of people will say, that heart shape. And that is something to look for. Also, you can see here, this is where a pronghorn can go from that to that 80 mark. This one is not, obviously. But you see this prong right here. This is a very short prong. And that's one of the issues that we have where I'm at here with the genetics of these bucks. This is not a big prong at all. This is a short prong. When you see a prong that's bladed, thick, and extends off of the horn, you've got something. You've got something going on. That's one you want to go after because that is a score. And then also you can see here, this buck is not super massive. This is just a good average solid buck. He's everything you want to look for. He's got some width, he's got some prong, he curls in real awesome. Whereas this buck, you can see here, he's got a much bigger prong, still not super long, much longer than the buck I just showed you, but he's got some character. He's got two little tits sticking off of this here. He's bladed, and this prong, you probably really can't see it. It's deceiving because it curls in. So this buck, actually, though he's shorter, scores better than this buck because of the mass measurements that you get. You can see probably the real big difference in mass. So that's something to keep in mind too.
So
and then you're
covered
gonna have
some
bucks
those
like
are
this.
some,
Oh, go ahead, bud.
yeah, those are some really good pointers for field judging. Just kind of looking at trying to gauge length in relation to the ears, trying
Yeah.
to gauge how big the prongs are, and then considering the mass measurements, probably related to the eyeball. But
Yep.
wrapping that actually into the scoring. So those are the main measurements, but kind of just talk through how that works.
Yeah. So you get your mass measurements. And dude, I score so few of these. And I'm honest to God proud to say that I score so few of these. But you get, I believe you get 3 mass measurements. You might get 4. I can't remember right off the top of my head. You get the measurement of the prong, and the prong actually where it comes into horn, it divides the horn, and then you get the prong measurement, and then you get the length of each horn. You don't get anything for width. And that length can, like we talked about, be deceiving because you hear people talk all the time about, he's 15 inches tall, he's 16 inches tall. That you're now talking booner quality if you have prong and if you have mass. Most of your bucks are going to be 11, 10, 11, 12. If you even get up into 13, you're in the 70s, I promise, as long as he's got a little bit of mass and a decent cutter. So yeah, I mean, I could geek out on all that stuff. Like I said, I score so few of them unless I know that I'm tickling 80. Then I'll jump into it a little bit.
Right. Yeah, I think you drew on another good point too. When it comes to field judging, one good indicator of what you're looking at is in relation to the ear, that magical 16-inch mark, which I've never seen, and not on a dead one. I may have seen some 16s in the field. I couldn't say
Sure.
but that goes right up there with the mythical booner. Like in general, they kind of got to be like 16 to hit boon, right? I mean, sort of as a general.
They don't. Well, I mean, it helps. The length helps, but more than anything, I focus more if I'm looking at a buck for score specific. My first look is at his prongs. That's where I'm looking first because he's got to have those to get it. And then I'm looking for mass at the base. And then the next one I look at, because you do get a mass measurement, towards the top. And when you look at something and you're like, oh man, that's pretty solid, and he carries that mass. We talk a lot about in whitetails, elk, everything, but if he carries that mass throughout, if he doesn't kind of fizzle out, but I go right to the base, and if he gives you a good side profile and you have good optics, you're really going to be able to see like, oh my gosh, he's going to look really broad, and you're going to be able to identify that mass, especially if you're running something like a phone scope or anything like that, where a mag view, whatever, where you can throw that on there. And then a lot of times, if I'm really focused on a particular buck and I'm watching him a lot, and that's another great thing about pronghorn, is a lot of times you can really watch him for a really long time. And though they are difficult to score, you can get a lot of phone footage, you can get a lot of photos, and then you can really start to kind of decipher and break that down, because you usually have a lot of time to look at a buck before you're going to stalk him, or even if he's approaching water. Most of the time they can shock you and just be there like a ghost out on the prairie, but most of the time you're going to have time to do some evaluation.
Right on. Well, a lot of people had that question. That's why we went so deep into it.
Yeah.
the trophy is in the eye of the beholder, but it is pretty cool to dream about seeing that 80 incher because they're so rare. I mean,
They
it's
are.
it's even rare that you can go pull up YouTube and watch endless videos of booner whitetails. You aren't gonna find a whole lot of them of booner pronghorn.
You're not. You're just not. It's kind of, we call them unicorns here. That's kind of our joke between all my buddies and stuff. And when we're talking goats and yeah, it's kind of a unicorn number. Like I said, I've been all around it, yet to break it.
It's like your buddy who goes fishing every time and says he caught a 30-inch walleye every time. Some
Right.
because they saw a bunch of 80-inch pronghorn are probably bold-faced liars.
Well, yeah, and I get a lot of guys here, that know that that I interact with on social media, and that's something we should talk about a little bit later. But if we can, we can. If we can't, we can't. But um, I get a lot of guys, and they're like, "Man, I got one. I want to show him to you. Where do you live? Can I bring him by?" I know he's 80, because it's just like a bull elk. Everybody's like, "Well, he's probably 300." And they get here, and I'm like, it's a great buck, and I don't want to burst their bubble, and I'm like, yeah, he's in the mid 60s, and then they want to put tape on him, and we'll tape him, and it's like, yeah, he's 65, 64. It takes such a special antelope to make 80. To even get 75. When you start bumping 75, I mean, you've got an incredible animal.
Yeah, and the last note we can make on that before we move on, just explain to people the uniqueness of their horns and the sheath.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't think that they shed those, and they do every single year. And it's hair, and it's just a sheath. And when you get one and you do a European mount, one of the things you've got to do is you've got to get that sheath off of there, because underneath this there's bone, and that bone is covered by a little thin kind of skin. It looks really weird. And if you don't get that off there and you just go, oh, cool, and you boil out the horns and you stick this on your wall, in a couple of weeks, you're going to be like, oh, why does he stink so bad? It's because he's got rotting flesh inside there. So that cap has to
Yeah.
come off. And that's something, where you also, some of the point, if you do go on a late season hunt and you do have a doe tag, because most of those doe tags, extended doe tags we talked about, are late season hunts. And you really need to look, because once those bucks pop those sheaths, and you're glassing out there, you really need to make sure, because they're still very easily to identify that they're a buck, because now everybody says they don't, and they're just small bucks because they still have these little devil horns sticking up. Well, that's just because they popped their sheaths. So you really got to make sure and identify that. And then a lot of people ask too, well, they don't, I still have buddies that don't believe that they shed the sheaths. Well, why don't I ever find them? I've found hundreds of them. But the biggest reason is because the second they hit the ground, they're not antler like a whitetail or an elk. Those things are hair, and rodents and everything else love them. Give them to a dog and they will be gone in seconds, not days, seconds. That thing is chewed up and gone. So that's why you don't see a lot of them.
Yeah, it's amazing. Usually when you look at the bases of the sheath, you can really see the hair, and
Oh yeah.
it's
I
just
mean, you
they're
can,
just dense hair. You can actually see the strands of hair on the
yeah.
base.
I mean, I can pull hair off of them still. I mean, they'll start to flake and stuff a little bit, but such a cool animal, man.
Now, I said that was going to be the last thing before we move on, but is it also true that does can have horns?
It is.
That's
It
right.
is. I shot a doe a few years ago for that reason. And there it goes back to it's in the eye of the beholder. And that was on an out of state hunt. And I burned my tag. Everybody's like, my buddy's like, you burned your tag on that doe. And I'm like, yeah, because she's going to eat awesome. And I'm going to mount her on a pedestal with a buck. She actually had about 7-inch horns, and they were super cool. I've never seen a doe with a prong or anything like that. It's just a horn. And
Hmm.
it's not common, but I wouldn't also say it's kind of like a bearded hen is, I guess, the kind of the relation that I would make to it. But yes, it is true that does have horns. And yeah, that's a definite thing.
Cool. All right. Well, let's move on to help these guys
Yeah,
kill a pronghorn or 20.
let's
So,
do it.
what to look for?
Yep. So one of the first things you look for if you're e-scouting, or boots on the ground scouting, I hate to tell everybody this, but it's the truth, and it's going to be harder for spot and stalk, but flat prairie landscape is what they love because their primary defense mechanisms are their eyes and their speed. They are the fastest land animal in North America, and there's arguments that they may be even faster than the cheetah. I'm saying those are arguments, so we don't need a million comments saying that that's not correct. I'm not saying it's correct. There's just arguments about it. They can flat fly. So that's why they don't mind being in super open terrain because one, they can see everything and they can see, there's 360 degrees in a circle. They can see 300 degrees. And some scientists that I've talked to, actual pronghorn, biologists that just are they just do pronghorn. They think that they can see even more than that. So, that's their primary, that's why they like to be in those flat prairie landscapes. So when you're e-scouting, you want to look for areas that are super flat, super open, landscape wise. Also, when you're thinking about water, and water is a great thing, everybody. Water, I will tell you this, if you are bow hunting, water is going to give you your best odds of success overall. Next to a baited bear hunt, I would say if you find a hot water source, that's where I will use the words pronghorn and easy in the same sentence. That's the only time you'll hear me use pronghorn and easy in the same sentence, but it's got to be the right water source and your setup has to be correct. Because water is basically the bait. When you're hunting baited bears, you're hunting them over a beaver carcass or donuts or dog food, or I've hunted them over everything. The water's the bait. And if you're focusing on water, focus on natural water sources. And the reason I tell you guys this is when an antelope walks up to a tank, okay, there's a lot of tanks out west, and I've killed a ton of bucks off of stock tanks if it's their only option. But most of the time, if they can find a natural water source, they're going to drink in that because they can drink water off the ground with their eyes still being able to scan. A lot of times they have to walk up on a little concrete paddock of those tanks and they have to lower their head because most of the time those floats, those ranchers don't want those overflowing. They keep them down a little bit and they actually have to drop their eyes, and that puts them at risk. So a natural water source is usually going to be your better option over artificial water sources. The only time that I will tell you that I will run to an artificial source is if it is overflowing. I don't know what it is. I don't pretend to know what it is, but if you find a tank that is overflowing and there are antelope in the area, they're going to water at that tank. They just love that fresh water trickling, bubbling over the side, running off the tank and pooling up on the ground, pooling up on that concrete paddock. I don't know what it is about it, but they will come miles to water at that. Something else to focus on is prairie dog towns. Watch out for rattlesnakes when you're hunting prairie dog towns because that is usually an infestation of rattlesnakes. It's a good area to find rattlesnakes. They'll get in the holes. They're after the babies. They can get around the backside and get shade. But those antelope like prairie dog towns. They're flatter. They love to bed in them. They're just congregation areas. And when you're looking for a water source, don't focus on water sources that they're at the little head end of a little canyon, or, there's a lot of dry creeks and stuff out west. Ignore those. I mean, just could a random goat come water at one of them? Yeah. But most of the time, they want an area where they can water and see in all directions all at the same time, and they want to be able to see as they approach that tank. They want to be able to see any signs of anything going wrong as they approach that tank. So that's super important to keep in mind when you're choosing a water source, and not just choosing a water source to hunt. I'm talking about choosing a water source when you're narrowing down water options. The process of elimination is much easier. Some of my best water sources actually sit up on little knobs or whatever, not like a hill, but just, I'm talking about in the West, I'm talking about a small little raise, because they can walk up to that, and as they're watering, they are now almost looking down on everything around them. And that's why they love it. Sage and antelope go together like Michael Jordan and basketball, man. They love the sage. They like to bed on the edge of it. They don't always, I've seen them bed in it. But those sage dappled areas where there's a lot of silver tip sage and things like that, they like to get in those. They love sunflowers. It's hot out there. They want to grab some shade. Like I said, they don't always bed right in the sunflowers, but they'll get right up next to them, get some shade. So those are all things to keep in mind. And then out west, a lot of the areas that I hunt, like I said, are super flat, even the areas up north. Any elevation gain that you can make, and that may be the bed of your pickup truck with your spotter fully extended and you standing up in the bed, may be your best vantage point. Use your vehicle if you can. That's one of the few Western hunts I'll tell you, your vehicle can be your best friend. So keep all those things in mind.
It's funny going back to the water. First of all, you said one of the, um, you know, quote unquote, easier or easiest ways to kill them is on an active water hole. It's also one of the
Yeah.
easiest ways to drive yourself completely insane.
Oh, you get the blind crazies really quick.
Real quick, especially when
Real
it's
quick.
90
About
degrees.
130 degrees in there, and you've got to commit to it. It's got to be a dawn to dark mental thing where you're in the blind. They can't watch you get into it. You can't be getting out. If you got to pee or you got to take a dump or whatever, you got to do it pretty discreetly. I'm not ashamed to say I carry a little spade shovel and I'll dig a hole in the blind and I'll do my best to try to cover it up. And it just is what it is, man, because you are pot committed. And if you can suffer 15 hours in there and you're on a water source, a lot of times you're going to get your opportunity, and there's no rhyme nor reason. So please ignore that. Ignore that. Well, they drink at the hottest part of the day. Do they? Sure. Absolutely. They can.
Sometimes.
I've killed them. I killed the second buck I ever killed over water. I had to wait 4 minutes for legal light. I had to wait 4 minutes for legal light because when they decide they're going to drink, they're going to drink. I've shot them in the fading hours of evening. I will tell you 10 to 2 does seem to be the magical time. I do kill a lot of bucks over water 10 to 2, but you can't go. And if you run a camera over it, you're going to see it. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, he's been there 3 days in a row at between 10 and noon. And then on day 4, he's there at 8:03 in the evening. It's a certainty.
And they will at times water at night. I've had some trail camera images.
Yep, I've got trail cam photos of them doing it.
But yeah, it's you wanna go nuts. Just not even talking about sitting on water, but if you're out there just glassing and spotting and stalking, and you're near a water source, especially if you're rifle hunting, if you're near one that's in sight, keep an eye on it throughout the day. And one of the most vexing things is to go watch some antelope or a buck bed some distance away and stare at that tank as long as they see fit. And they take their sweet ass time. You sit there and you try to crack the code and figure out the rhyme and reason. And I know you got more experience than I do, but I've spent a painful number of hours watching them in and around water. And man, it is like a Rubik's Cube.
It's a Rubik's Cube, and there's no code, there's no rhyme or reason. I just tell people when they want to drink, they're going to drink. And yeah.
So, lay of the land, just some of the more intricate things. Scrapes is a very unique, I think, important topic to cover, because I think even some people who have hunted pronghorn a bunch don't realize that they make scrapes. And if you're not hunting them in the pre-rut or the rut or post-rut, you're probably not going to see it. But let's talk about scrapes.
Yeah, one of the things I look for a lot is when I'm just looking for productive antelope areas, productive water sources are scrapes. Antelope scrape a lot, and unlike a whitetail, they'll actually scrape. We'll start seeing scrapes. I don't really start looking for them in May. I'm killing gobblers in May. But starting in June, I'll start going out and looking at my areas, and they're already scraping. And when an antelope scrapes, obviously he doesn't have an overhanging licking branch or any of that stuff, but he paws out the ground, he urinates in it, and he also defecates in it. Sometimes I have seen them where they'll just urinate. I've seen them just paw the ground and do neither and walk away. But most of the time, they will urinate and they'll take a dump in it. And if they get real active in an area, they'll start leaving lots of scrapes, and you'll find some scrapes with several. I mean, it just looks like dropping. They'll even start to be almost mound-like inside of them. And that's a buck that's doing that at a regular, pretty regular. And something else to keep in mind is like when you're driving, one of the things I do when I'm driving even county roads get dissed, or not dissed, they get bladed often. And it pushes all that soft dirt up into the edge. And antelope love that soft dirt. So they'll go, and you'll find a lot of scrapes just on the edges of county roads and things like that. And that will give you, I found the best fence crossings, and that's a way to kill a pronghorn. I've killed them on a fence crossing just because I identified an active, like 4 or 5 active scrapes in one little small area along a county road. Started paying attention to the pasture. Water wasn't an option. Spot and stock was going to be impossible. Decoys weren't really in the play. And I found where that buck, several bucks actually, were going underneath a fence. I mean, it was, the ground was worn away that deep, and that bottom wire had hair in it for days. And I was able to build a natural blind and kill a nice buck off of a fence crossing.
That's
Being
really
flexible is huge.
Now, will multiple bucks visit scrapes and kind of try to claim dominance?
You know, that one, dude, I haven't gone. I don't even feel comfortable saying yes or no, because somebody probably knows more about that than I do. I've never seen it happen. I've never seen a buck use another buck scrape. Could they? I'm sure they do. Maybe. I don't know the total answer to that one. But I don't even worry about that as much. As I do just finding lots of scrapes. And, you know, when we talk about the next thing on there, investigating all your water sources, when you have all your water sources pinned on HuntStand, that's a great thing, because it's going to give you so many jumping off points. And as I go in and look at these water sources, as I'm driving those 2 tracks in, or as I'm walking those 2 tracks in, or riding my horse in, I start looking on those 2 tracks, because a lot of times those antelope will walk those roads, they'll scrape along those roads, or I'll identify cattle trails coming to and from the tank. And if they're loaded with scrapes, that's a sure telltale way to know that there's bucks probably using that water source. Because sometimes the tracks, especially around tanks, are so hard to see because the ground is like concrete. And tracks can be really hard to identify. But if you'll walk those cattle trails, that leave those tanks, and you walk out on them 150, 200 yards, a lot of times you'll start seeing little prints, and you'll pick up tracks, and you'll pick up scrapes. And then, you know, okay, I probably got a good water source going here.
Trail cameras.
Yeah.
You must have gotten some pretty cool images over the years, and probably some videos
Dude,
too.
I have so many. I have hundreds of videos, hundreds of trail camera images. They're so fun. What I will tell you about trail cameras is, if you're going to use them, I highly recommend it. When you show up to an area, the first thing I do, I have them out here right now because I'm close, right? So I can run them. But if I show up to, you know, South Dakota to hunt pronghorn, and I've got 4 water sources, I go to them, just like we talked about, investigate all water sources. And when I find one that I even think an antelope is breathing around, I put a trail camera on it, and then I'll come back throughout my hunt, because on day 4, I might jump in a blind right there. But when you set a trail camera for pronghorn, do yourself a favor, bring a T-post and bring a post hole driver, because if you dig a hole and you put a 2x4 in it, a badger is going to dig it up. He's going to knock it over, and he's going to pee all over your trail camera with stinky, sticky urine. Coyotes dig them up. Everything wants to bump on them. Cows will turn them, you know. So I bring a post, I drive it into the ground, I attach my camera. I usually use like a T-post camera connector attachment, because a lot of times they're hard to manipulate on those T-posts. Set it up, and then boom, you're covered, and you're good to go. And you don't have to worry about, you know, something digging up your post and knocking it on the ground. And then if there's anything natural that I can set it on, you know, sometimes the stock tanks will actually have where they open a little lid, and they'll turn those stock tanks on and off. they'll have a little elevated deal that sticks out of the ground, and I'll put some rocks in there and kind of position my trail camera and just use that too. I've done that several times as well. So trail cameras can be your best friend, because I've gone back 4 days into a hunt after having my butt kicked spot and stock and watching diaper butts run away from me for the 100th time. And I'm like, I want to go sit in a ground blind, please. And I don't have to start at square one. I just go pull my camera cards and go, okay, this is the most active. I need to be here. And you're getting scouting knowledge while you're hunting if you're running a camera.
That's right. And for everybody who sticks around until the end, we're actually going to be giving away a prize package that contains a camera for 3 different random winners who stick around till the end. And it is the new 360-degree stealth cam, which is incredible. And what a tool for pronghorn hunting. Putting it by a water tank,
Yeah.
360-degree visibility. I mean, I'm really excited to try to get one out, even just for fun before I head out to Wyoming this fall.
And I know, like with these seminar, like these things, it's so hard for me because time is obviously of the essence. But I do want to say too, if you want to learn about, a lot of people ask me like, man, I blew the shot on the antelope when he was coming into the tank. I didn't know, how do I know he was going to drink? Da 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 da. If you set your camera to video, which I do a lot, you're going to a lot of times pick up those bucks way in the distance, and you're going to get to watch them come into the tank, and you're going to learn the difference between a buck that is ready to drink and a buck that's going to give you a drive-by, or a buck that's going to, I know now when I look at a buck, what he's going to do is he comes into that water source. I know straight off 200 yards out if he's going to come in and dunk his head in the tank, or if he's going to come in and be cautious and pace back and forth and come in and sip and look and sip and look before he goes full on drink mode, or if he's just going to give me a 60-yard drive by just to check things out. You can really tell based on their mannerisms if you've watched them enough at water.
Cool. So like you said before, this is one of the few hunts that you would highly advocate that people put the pedal to the metal and cover some ground and use a vehicle to your advantage. And that
Use your
couldn't
truck, man. It's one of the few I'll say, and I use my truck a lot, especially when I'm decoying. When the rut starts, I'm not even looking for antelope. I'm just looking for dust trails that look like a jet stream of a plane across the prairies, and I just start chasing dust. Because that's bucks chasing bucks or bucks chasing does. But I also use the truck because I can glass off of my truck a lot. I get to the point where I will actually, one of my trucks has a dent in the hood because I've gotten up clear, or not on the hood, but on the cab. I've climbed clear up on top of it so many times to gain elevation and really look an area over. And your truck can get you between things faster. Of course, if you're in a walk-in area or something like that, you got to abide by the laws of the land and do things right and use your horsepower, your legs. But your truck, your UTV were legal. Those things, get them plated correctly, get the necessary tags for the state you're hunting, and put those, they can be your best friend. They'll save you a lot of time. You'll get more stocks in, and you'll be able to navigate the terrain much quicker, because a lot of times you're going to be covering a lot of ground.
And on to the next point that goes right along with that, the quality of glass.
Best you can afford, guys.
Yeah.
Best you can afford. I mean, I don't throw out the money card on things like, I'm a pincher and a saver and oh my gosh, but if I can absolutely make sure that I want the best glass that I possibly can. And that includes my binos on my chest. And then I need a good spotter. Because I want to, like I said, I'm not hung up on trophy potential, but I want to look a buck over too. I like to look at him. I like to watch him. And one way, guys, to beat the blind crazies is to take your spotter inside the ground blind with you, because it's super fun. You'll end up watching prairie dogs. You'll end up watching coyotes, foxes, badgers. And then you can really learn a lot about an antelope behavior, because you can be in that blind and you can start, looking at bucks you found in the distance until the heat waves really start, and then you're screwed. I mean, you're going to be watching heat waves, and I don't care what glass you're running, it ain't going to matter, but you're going to spend a lot of time behind your optics. So bring the best you can.
So archery, which is your specialty, that's what your book is about. I believe it's called Bow Hunting the Prince of the Plains, isn't that
It
right?
is. It is.
Let's
Yeah.
talk For all the lunatics that want to go after these things with bows, let's give them some insight.
Water holes first, guys. Everybody wants to spot and stock, but if you have a hot water source, you better be on it if possible. My blinds are out now. Season starts August 15th. My blinds were out July, they were out. Yeah, July. I was in Florida. When did I get back? July 20th or 20th, somewhere in there. I put the blinds out. And so the only reason for that is they get used to it. And one other thing that I'm going to tell you is if you get your blinds out early, you can set them at 20 and 25 yards. It might take a few days for those animals to get completely used to it, but pretty soon they're going to just take it as, hey, this is just a part of it. If you have to do a same day set, or if you are putting your blind up and you're thinking, okay, I got, I'm going to hunt it the next day or in 2 days, don't crowd them, please. You should be practicing all year. You should be shooting all year. Get that blind, back it off the water source. I'll set mine at 40 yards. I know that's a longer shot, but you will see a major difference in the activity you're going to get on same day sets or just only having that blind out a few days if you don't crowd the water source. Also, if there's any feed bunks out there that aren't in use, if there aren't cattle in there, there's feed bunks. If there's old tractor parts, if there's windmill parts, anything that you can use to break up that ground blind, it doesn't take much for them. It's not like you got to blend it in for a whitetail. Anything you can use it. And that's going to help you at your water hole. Of course, you got to wear black as much as you can. Get in the back of the ground blind. Make sure if you're self-filming or any of that, you don't have that camera sticking out where something can shine. You don't want anything but a dark hole in there. So that's just some good water hole tips that have really, really, really helped me. And it's hard to play the winds when you set a water hole, but use your HuntStand app. This is another thing I was talking about earlier. Look at the weather forecast in your area. Right now, where I live, we get south winds and we get east winds. So my blinds are set up for south and east winds. Can we get a north? Sure. Am I screwed when we get a north? Maybe. But use that to find the prevailing winds and set up accordingly. And then when it comes to spot, go ahead, Josh.
No, I was just gonna say, once again, you guys really think about sticking around till the end. We got a lot more great stuff to talk about here, and even though we're running longer than we anticipated, there's just so much.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's
I love them too much. I want you guys to kill them. I want you to have fun.
Well, we will also, as part of that package at the end, we will be giving away a ground blind, and a pretty sweet one. So more incentive to ground.
It is. It is. So let's move on to spot and stock. Absolutely my favorite way to hunt them. Absolutely the most frustrating way to hunt them. One antelope in my entire life I killed on the first stock of the year. Most of them are above 17 stocks. Some of them are in the 30s and 40s. You are going to see a lot of diaper butts running away from you. You're going to see a lot of bucks and does that want to stand there and go and blow and go and run around you in circles and things like that. When you are spotting and stalking, I used to, and it's very hard not to go after everyone you see because they are so visible. We talked about that. But now I want to look for a high percentage stock situation. And that is either a buck that's bedded where I can navigate the terrain and work in on him, or a buck or bucks or a herd or whatever that are moving. And I have a good general idea that I can get where I think they may be going before they get there. And I can navigate dry creeks, crawl through the sage, whatever it may be to get to those locations. When you're glassing, and you are getting ready to go after an animal that is bedded or that is in a location that you feel comfortable with, a lot of times they'll just get in the sage and mill or around some sunflowers and mill. And you decide, I'm going to go. I have the terrain. Make sure before you go, what I do is I mark the position of the animal on my HuntStand app. Then I mark my position. That way throughout the stock, I can know pretty generally where I'm trying to get to because things change drastically. You don't want to get the hedgehog effect when you're crawling and things like that. And guys, by the way, when you're spotting and stalking, crawling means crawling, and slithering like a snake means slithering like a snake. Sometimes you got to be on your belly, setting your bow out in front of you, going feet at a time, and it's exhausting, but it's worth it, because if they see you most of the time, the game is up. They may give you a glimmer of hope and actually come at you because they're curious, but when you sit up in the flat open to draw, bye-bye. Sometimes you get lucky, but most of the time you don't. So, keep a really low profile and use shadows to your advantage. One of the things that I've seen that when I'm spotting and stalking that I look for that really can mess with their eyesight is casting shadows. So if I get to a place where I have to make a risky move or something and I've got some overcast or even clouds in the sky, I'll wait for a moment for that cloud to cover the sun. Especially if I have to make a risky move. I also like to stalk, obviously, in low light periods because they're just not as sharp at those times with their eyesight. And another thing I do is I use my smartphone a lot, and I will take pictures of the terrain between me and the buck so that I can identify certain things on the stalk. That's a fast breakdown of spot and stalk, but those are your main things that you really got to keep in mind. And you got to be ready to shoot an extended distance. I'm not telling everybody to go out and launch at 100 yards. That's not what I'm saying. You need to be proficient at 60. It would help if you get very comfortable at 70. Again, I'm not promoting long range shooting. I'm just saying most of the time, most of my spot and stocks, I've killed them at 30, but I've shot a lot at 60 to 65 too.
And is it safe to say, because I'm sure we're going to get this question, probably eternally, fixed or mechanical?
Only mechanical, please. Please don't shoot a fixed at a, no, if you want to shoot a fixed blade, go ahead. And if you want to tar and feather me for saying that, go ahead. But they look huge when they're standing out on the prairie because there's no scale behind you to give them anything. So they look massive, right? But they're 120 pounds, 130 pounds on the hoof. You'll go out there and be like, oh, and I don't mean, oh, like, oh, this is it. You're just going to be like, oh, he's smaller than, nose to tail. They're not very big. So they're also light boned. They have a lot of hair, but you can blow through them with a fixed blade. You can blow through them with a fixed blade with low poundage, or excuse me, blow through them with a mechanical, and blow through them with a mechanical even set at low poundage. You're going to give yourself more cutting diameter, and yeah.
So let's jump to decoying, because that's a hot topic, that's a fun topic, and that's I can
Sure.
tell you, man, if you cut me loose around mid-September in
Oh,
Pronghorn country with a decoy, dude, I could just run around out there without a weapon, and it's so unbelievable how aggressive they get.
they are they're so ultra aggressive. The window of that super testosterone rage aggression is usually fairly short. I like to start using them around the 8th of September, and I'll go clear to the end of September and even into October if it's a bow season and rifles not open. Rifle on public land decoys, usually not a really good idea. One of my favorite things that I look for when I'm decoying is my favorite situation is to watch a buck run off, leave his girls and run off another buck. And guys, they will run them into the next county. They will disappear. And you'll be like, they're gone. Well, they're not gone. I swear to you, they're coming back to those does. And a lot of times those does, not I'm not gonna say they don't care, but if you can stay somewhat stealthy and get between those does and that buck on his return, when he comes and his first thing he sees is another buck between him and his ladies, you're going to see the same reaction that you saw when he went to run off that other buck. He's going to come hard, and he's going to come like a cutting horse, and he's going to slide in at about 30, 40 yards, and he's going to expect movement. He's going to expect a reaction from that lesser buck, and that's your time to get drawn and execute your shot. The other thing I like to look for is a buck that's bedded on the backside of his does. Anytime that I can position myself closer to the does, I'm more of a threat. And I always try, when I'm doing that, when he's coming back from running off another buck, if I'm 400 yards and he sees me, I'm good. 400's fine. If I'm making another move, like I said, with they're all kind of bedded and he's bedded on the backside of them, they're kind of in chill mode, I like to try to get within 200 before I show him the decoy. And a key to decoying is If you can get the decoy up before he sees it, it's going to increase your chances exponentially. If he actually sees the decoy go up and he's watching, I've had him react positively to it, but I also get a lot of negatives to that. So if you can get the decoy up where and then he looks over and he's like, whoa, bam, where did he come from? He slipped in on me. Bam. You get that immediate aggression type of reaction to that. So those are two instances where I really like to use a decoy. And my favorite decoy that I've gone to now is Ultimate Predator Gears. That's the one that you guys are seeing in the picture. It's a bow mounted decoy with a shoot through window. They weigh nothing. They fold up to nothing. I'll also use them spot and stock when I got to make a real aggressive move. Sometimes I'll throw that on my bow, and it just gives me a little bit of an advantage to make that risky risky move. So that's something to keep in mind too.
One thing that's not here on this list that I think is at least worth mentioning, because it's really it's a cool, unexpected thing, and if you saw it in the field, you'd wonder if you're going crazy. But the other thing I learned early on is how incredibly vocal they can be.
Oh man, absolutely. And there's guys that call them, and there are some antelope calls on the market. I've never messed with it. I've interviewed guys for stories that swear by them. I've just never used them. I get such an aggressive response during that time of year most of the time that I'm just letting that decoy do the work for me. But I mean, if you want to try mixing some calling in there, I think it's fine. And another thing you can do with decoys, and something I've started doing in the last couple of years, is I will in the early season, even, like opener, August 15th, here is the opener. Some states it's earlier, it's usually that mid-August timeframe. If I can identify an area where these antelope, you go out and you're like, man, they're there. Gosh, they're always there. I don't know how many times we've said that over the years, like, man, those antelope are always there during the day. They're always there during the day. I will go in there. I'll take a 3D buck, which is very hard to find, but you can get a flambeau deer decoy and you can paint it and you can make your own horns. Or you can use actual horns. It works awesome. And I will take that decoy, a 3D decoy. I'll take either a buck or a doe decoy mounted to my bow, and I'll get 3 or 4 Montanas, and I will create a little herd out there, and I will commit to it like a water hole set. I'll wear white. I'll wear a white shirt because white is a great color. You see that decoy, there's a lot of white. There's a lot of white on those animals. It's something they key on. So I'll wear a white shirt, and occasionally I'll take a white towel with me. I always do, but occasionally I'll get crazy and I'll tuck that white towel over my butt, and I'll take that decoy and I'll crawl around in my little decoy spread. And you want to talk about tripping a trigger on curiosity to bring a buck in or help him close that little bit when he's hung up in the early season, and he's not giving you an aggression response. He's giving you a curiosity response, or an area of like, hey, this is my area. I need to be in there. What's going on? The newbies showed up. That will help trip their trigger and give you a chance to decoy animals in the early season.
Last thing we'll end on for this section, the old Trojan horse.
Oh
Literally,
man.
even with a cow decoy.
Oh, if you're in a pasture with a lot of cows, a cow decoy can be pure poison. It can be pure money. If you act like a cow. These pronghorn are used to being around cattle, and rarely do those cattle walk in a straight line at them. They don't like that. So if you can just get in, mill around, act like you're grazing, I'll go away from them sometimes. I'll move away, or I'll move away diagonally or whatever, so I'm not turning my back and exposing everything, but I'll move like a cow and just work with them. And when that buck starts, you'll know, because he'll start watching you, and then he'll feed a little bit, and then he'll kind of walk towards you even, and then he'll feed a little bit. He's starting to accept the fact that you're not a threat and that you're just one of the hundreds of cows he sees every day. So don't put that cow decoy on your bow or get a Montana and march in a straight line towards him, because that's going to end badly.
Last thing though, the live horse.
Oh, dude, it's unreal. It's so fun. It's so fun. If you are a horse person, or someone with horses, in 2022, I killed a buck with horses. And again, it has to be the right situation. Usually there needs to be horses in the pasture or an adjacent pasture where it's something those pronghorn are seeing regularly. And you just saddle them up. It usually helps if you have two, and it helps if you have a buddy, and you ride out there. And then when you identify where they are, you get off your horses, you take off the bridles, you put the halters and the lead ropes on, and you start working your way towards them, letting those horses stop and graze, staying behind them. You can get underneath, if they're good broke horses, you can get underneath them, crawl around, glass. It's so much fun. And I shot my buck at 32 yards from off of, not off of a horse, but just slid out from behind his butt and boom, executed. But again, make sure, they're good broke horses that aren't going to kick you in the face when the bow goes off. Make sure you spend some time but with those horses, or have a good friend that knows that those horses won't react in a negative way to any of that stuff.
Last time I tried that, for some reason, the horse that I got stuck with didn't like the looks of a crossbow. I can tell you that. And
Yep.
I'm not a cowboy, so it didn't take much of him to show that he wasn't comfortable for me to walk back to the truck.
But it works well.
We talked archery. Let's talk about burning some gunpowder.
Yes. So let's talk about rifle hunting. And guys, I'm going to tell you this right now. It's the funnest hunt you can do. It's one of the funnest things you can do with your clothes on. It is unreal. I caught a lot of negativity. I think I talked to you about this. I bow hunted exclusively for 23 years. I killed some pronghorn with a rifle during that time, but I never made a real big deal about it. So everybody just kind of knew me as like the pronghorn bow guy. And then last year I go out and I go on this rifle hunt, and people were like, "Oh man, now you're a rifle hunter. You cheated, this and that." And please don't be that person. I love hunting way too much to limit myself to one weapon. If it's a legal weapon, I'm in. I just love the hunt. And with a rifle, you can experience so much fun because you can watch them. You can be more selective with your harvest. And I mean, you can shop around a little bit too. You can be more selective, especially if you draw a tag in a really good unit. Now you want to make sure you're being really selective and finding the best buck that you can get, because most of the time you can get within killing distance of a really good rifle with a good optic, good ammunition, one you're really comfortable with. And when I'm rifle hunting, you couldn't pay me to sit at water. You just couldn't give me enough money to post up over water. Stay mobile, stay on the move from area to area, use your optics, and find a buck that you want. And when you find that buck that you want, now it's time to go, there's that distance of, well, how close do I need to get? And I'm not going to tell anybody that. I don't want to say, we'll get to 200 or whatever. I shot my buck last year at 330 yards because I was super comfortable with that shot. I'd been ringing steel out to 800, and I felt really comfortable with that. But that's up to you on how close you want to get. But I will tell you, getting within 300 is usually pretty manageable. So stay mobile, use your optics. And then if you do decide to sit water, if you're like, what, I want to sit water, that's fine. If you sit water though, do this. Do not put your blind 30 yards from the water. Put it 150 yards off the water. Just don't give them any reason to not come to that tank. If it's 150 yards off the water, they could give a crap about it sitting out there. So, don't crowd the tank again.
That's right. Yeah. And you mentioned 300 yards. What I have found doing a lot of rifle hunting now for pronghorn is that's kind of the sweet spot where they give you a little bit of grace.
You get a
But
little grace at 300. At 200, you get none. At 150, you get minus a million.
yeah, like 300, there are very few situations that you can't get to 300, but it seems like once you get to that, their tolerance just disappears. And I mean, they can see you much farther, but they have tolerance, and it depends on the animal, what the pressure is, and all that kind of stuff. And also something that we should probably talk about that I've learned is very important and almost can be feel like cheating is using those dawn and dusk hours when their eyesight is definitely at a deficit. Talk about
It's
that.
definitely at a deficit. And that goes back to, that patience instance of it and not getting in a hurry when you have that rifle, because I'll sit on a buck. If I know it's a buck I want to harvest and I have a rifle, and I know that like right now is not the best time. I mean, I'm going to be lucky to get within 300. I'm not even going to push it. I'm just going to hang back. I'm going to stay on that vantage point. I'm going to stay where I'm at. I'm going to let the daylight go away and let that low light work to my advantage. Then I'm going to make the move and I'm going to kill him.
Yeah, it's wild what you can get away with in low light, especially at the
Oh
sunset.
man. Yep.
So yeah,
And yeah, just moving, like if you're moving on, one thing with your rifle too, guys, is use your HuntStand app, use your boots on the ground scouting, use your truck as you're driving around, know where your best vantage points are, because you're going to be able to see most of the time for miles. And if you can find, and sometimes my vantage point is a knob that is as tall as me, that's 6 foot off the ground. Sometimes I get lucky and I got a great vantage point, a little plateau with cedars on it that I can see forever, and that's like a dream. But any vantage point is a good vantage point, so keep that in mind.
the caliber debate. Of course, we got several questions like this during registration. What's the best caliber option? That's could go on about it forever.
6.5
But
PRC.
I mean, it's pretty
uh
hard to beat.
I'm a, I'm a I'm a 6.5 PRC guy. I'm a PRC guy in general for the 7, the 300. Hornady did an incredible job when they created that. I like a 6.5 PRC because I got excellent muzzle velocity, supreme accuracy, pinpoint dirty accuracy. Also, though, you don't want to overlook, like a 240. My son shoots a 243. He's killed him at, 300 plus yards. They are, but I go with a fast, flat shooting caliber. 6.5 PRC, 243 is a is a great one to, I got a lot of buddies that'll shoot a 30-06. I mean, that's just kind of your common run of the mill. You don't have to go get a pronghorn specific caliber. But what I will tell you is they're not big boned. They're not a heavy animal. They don't take around to the high shoulder well at all. If you punch their lungs, they're going to run like you beat the band, and they're going to just spin in circles and fall over. So I do like the 6.5 PRC. I like the Creedmoor. I like the 243. 257 Roberts is a good one. I mean, there's just 7mm, 7mm 08, 308. Those are all calibers that is good. And my wife likes a 270. She shoots a 270 for everything because it's just a great all-around caliber. I mean, Winchester has another one. I mean, when they created that, it's like, oh my gosh, you get great muzzle velocity, you get pinpoint accuracy, and it's a great Western caliber that you can use for mule deer and elk.
That's right. Yeah. And I think kind of a generalization that you could make out of what you just covered there is, wow, there are a lot of really great sub 30 caliber rounds,
Oh man.
cartridges that you can shoot. And if you actually look at the ballistics of the 243 compared to like the Creedmoor, um, depending on what bullet you're using, it's ballistically superior out to most distances where people are even capable of shooting. And the 6.5 doesn't even gain on it until after 400 yards.
Yeah,
So
and if you're going to be a 400 guy, which my son, I mean, he's a rifle guy and he wants to shoot him, inside of that. You're so fast, so accurate. That's why a lot of even predator guys have gone to him over the 22 250 and stuff. I mean, that this 243 is it's just such a good caliber, and it's a common caliber, so you won't have trouble finding ammo. A 90 grain, 95 grain bullet is more than enough. It's sizzling and it hits with a lot of energy to put those animals down quickly.
I also don't think you can necessarily go wrong with because they're relatively easy to kill. They're pretty easy to kill. So many different bullet options. I mean, just
Oh,
pick your poison. Like you're probably gonna want some type of tipped bullet so you get some better ballistics out of it. But you could go
yeah.
out and shoot these things with just about any bullet. And honestly, as long as you don't hit them in the shoulder, you don't have to be shy about shooting a bigger bullet either. Because
No.
even if you end up having a bullet failure and you pinhole them through the lungs, they're still gonna die.
Oh, and that's the thing. I mean, I will tell you, I shot my buck last year because I was on the fringe of an elk hunt. You know, that was an October rifle hunt. When I shot my buck, I shot him with a 300 PRC, and I shot him right through the lungs. And I had a pinhole going. I shot him with a 300. It was a bonded bullet, so I had, you know, just boom, boom, and gone, and no meat damage. Shot him through both lungs. That was with the 300 PRC. So yeah, it's exactly right. I just like being able to shoot some distance and shooting distance before my hunt. It's just like with anything else, you know, I don't like that. Well, I'm hitting a pie plate at 200, you know, I want to be hitting the same hole at 200 with these calibers because it's very, very, very possible to do. And then continuing to work out from there, ringing steel as far as I can. One, because it's fun, and two, because it builds confidence.
I think it's before we move on to talking about the end of the hunt, which is meat and trophy care. Last thing
Yeah.
to mention here related to firearm hunting is I know this is kind of brought up over and over again, but I don't think it can be overstated for pronghorn hunting, and that is practicing from field positions because you
Sure.
can sit at a bench all day and you can lay on a blanket or a mat and shoot prone all day, but how often do you think you get those shots? Not often, especially when you're dealing
No.
with flat country. Um, you're probably going to at least need to be kneeling or in some sort of raised position. I do recommend a
Yep.
bipod, and
100%. That's exactly what I was going to say.
a bipod is great. A tripod with the Arca system a lot of people are using now is great. A death grip, anything that can get you a lot of stability and a little bit of a raise, a little bit of elevation. And a trick I like to use that I learned a long time ago, just because I was in a pinch for options, is if you're hunting in sagebrush country, you can't rest your rifle really on sagebrush. It'll just bend over, but
And
you,
fall.
it'll just fall over. It's flimsy. But if you use more surface area by taking your jacket off and throwing it over the sagebrush, you can actually come up with a really nice front rest because it gives you more surface area and it's a more of a tense surface. So trying to get it on a sagebrush branch for a rest, not going to work. Using the whole thing by throwing your jacket over it can be a godsend at times.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. But you're exactly right, man. Be ready to shoot off of sticks. You know, be ready to, you know, I do like when I'm hunting that real flat, like in this picture, that's home. And you can see to the end of the horizon. That's obviously a bow kill, but I like those bipods because when I can get prone, I like to get prone. And you know, there's not a lot of cover that you're gonna have to fight with most of the time. You usually get good clearance, and you can get a prone shot. You know, not always, but there are a lot of times you can get a prone shot.
So now that we've showed a bunch of these folks how to knock one down, what happens after that?
Have a plan for that meat, because especially archery hunting, in this picture right here, it was 104 degrees on that particular day, and meat will spoil quickly. So have a plan. There is always rifle hunting, bow hunting, whatever. There is a quality cooler in my truck on with ice. I know, I do my research. I know if I need to go get ice, where the nearest convenience store is, where I can get ice in a hurry. Because what I want to do is I want to, once I get out there and you get your photos and you get those things, I go to work right now. And I work with haste. I work carefully because you want a sharp knife. Most of the time, like a Havlon or an Outdoor Edge or something like that is plenty sufficient. But you want as sharp as possible, and you want it, that hide has so much hair and that sun is baking down. You want to get that hide off of there, and you want to, most of the time, I'm hunting in areas when I'm bow hunting that though I might be able to use my truck, I can't drive out on the pasture land because, that's one, if I've got private permission, it's just disrespectful. Those guys don't want to lose their grass. They don't want their pasture all tracked up. So a lot of the times I'm a mile or two from my truck if I'm on a spot and stock, or even at a water hole deal where I, can't get a truck to it or whatever. So I always carry a little tarp with me. I put that tarp on the ground because I want to keep my meat as clean and hair free as possible. Be careful with the hairs. You don't want it flying everywhere. If you cut correctly, you won't have hair all over that meat. Get that meat off of there. And the reason I have the tarp sitting there is because sometimes I'll be working quick enough where I can just get most of it all on the tarp. But if I'm not able to, I go straight into a game bag, tie off the game bag, and put them on that tarp. And that way everything is organized in my game bags. So I can go straight from the game bags into my pack and boom, I am gone. I can do it as quick as possible. And then I get that meat on ice instantly. And then I am out of there and I am to the nearest cold storage locker, or I will go straight home if I'm here and we are processing that thing that night. Because the better meat care you have, the better that animal is going to taste. That is a fact.
No doubt. Yeah, if you guys think he's being fanatical about this, he's absolutely not. I have published dozens and dozens of wild game recipes over the years, and I was a cook for a long, long time. So I'm very much into the DIY meat processing and butchering and all the things related to meat. And I can tell you that I don't think I've ever encountered a single animal other than maybe like a rough grouse where there's just something about the way these things are built where you have very little grace period. Once they're dead, something happens where the meat just it's
It
permeated.
happens quick.
It happens so quick. I mean, like faster than you would believe. In fact, I purposely kind of tried testing something several years ago. I was hunting, it was real cold out, and I was in Wyoming. And I was like, well, this is one of those times to see just how resilient the meat is. So I figured I could just take the guts out and leave the hide on and leave it in the snowbank, thinking that it would cool down fast enough and everything would be fine. It's the gamiest, I hate to use that term, but it's the gamiest pronghorn I've ever killed. And I know it's because I
Yeah.
did not get that hide off and I didn't get the meat off the bone.
And that's where where antelope meat gets a bad rap. If it's properly cared for, those will be the best, tenderest, almost sweet tasting backstraps you'll ever eat in your life. The tenderloins will be incredible. And then when you want to take the meat and you want to make, if you want to do flank steaks or whatever, great. But man, I take it off the neck. I take everything I can because I can make some incredible sausage. I can make jerky. I can do all kinds of things, burger and spaghettis. I mean, we had antelope spaghetti 2 nights ago. It's unbelievable, but it all comes down to the game care of that meat. If you take care of it, you're going to have a great eating experience. And that's the number one end goal. But if you don't, you're going to be wondering who you can give it to.
For sure. Yeah, actually to celebrate I guess to celebrate this class a little bit beforehand, I actually had a pronghorn deli meat sandwich that I
Atta
made.
boy.
That was real good. There's so many different ways you can prepare it, and
There
it is
are.
just rich, dark red, purplish meat that has so much flavor and great texture. Just take care of it properly and be careful of that hair because that'll get you.
It will get you. Keep it clean. And that's something else when I get it out of the game bags at home, or I get it back to camp or whatever, I wash it. If I have a garden hose, I spray it all off and I'll go through and meticulously remove any of those orange or white hairs because the cleaner, the better. And if you don't process your own game and you are going to take it to a butcher, they will thank you because when they get them and they're covered in hair and dirt and everything, they just kind of look at you like, oh, one, I don't want to have to deal with this. Two, you're not going to like what I'm going to give you. And it's not their fault. It's the fault of the person that didn't care for the meat.
For sure. Well, I'm happy to say that we still have a lot of people who have stuck around. We've been in this thing now for nearly 2 hours. We could still go on for
Eesh,
another 10 hours probably, but
easy.
we covered a lot. We have a bunch of pronghorn content at huntstand.com in our field notes section. We've got a bunch on our YouTube channel. We have a new article that just hit by Jace on the website in the field notes section. So please, if you're looking for more pronghorn information, check out everything we have at HuntStand. Go to our YouTube channel, subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to our email list, our field notes email that we send out, and also pay attention on social media because we cover a lot of stuff there. But without further ado, we have a really sweet prize package to give away here that touches on a lot of the things that we covered for some hunting techniques. So we've got the Stealth Cam revolver. It's a 360-degree cellular trail camera that just came out from Stealth Cam. The lens spins around inside. Nothing can get past it. It's really cool. Great tool for pronghorn hunting. We're going to give you a cam stick with that to mount it on. And then for when you inevitably, if you pronghorn hunt enough, you're probably going to end up in a ground blind at some point. So we're going to give away the Muddy Preview 4, which is a great blind for archery or rifle hunting. And of course, you can use it for other whitetail hunting and whatnot too, or turkey hunting. And then with that, we're going to give you a couple of the Muddy folding tripod ground seats. And then for hauling your gear around in the field, we got the Tenzing Day Pack, to the 2300, which will keep you out in the field and also give you plenty of space to throw some meat in when you finally kill one. But before you do that, you're going to want to cut it up. So we got the SOG Ether FX. I've been using that knife now for about 1.5 years. Just a great skeletonized lightweight knife. Great grip on it. I can't say enough about it. It's the perfect size. You can break down just about any animal for it, and it's ideal for pronghorn. So those 3 prizes are going to Josh Schrader, Tom Olivas, hopefully I pronounced that right, and Evan Erickson. We have your email addresses. We'll hit you up tomorrow. We'll follow up with you. We'll get all this great gear out to you. Thank you guys for sticking around. And now, if you want to stick around for a little longer, we are going to go through a Q&A, answer some of those questions that came in before the event and during the event. And we're going to do this rapid fire style. So we're not going to drag on about it. We're just going to get to some quick answers.
Also, Josh, real quick too, I'll say, if anybody has any further questions to the social media thing, I try to answer any of them. And if it's a pronghorn question, especially, hit me up on Instagram and I'm happy to answer whatever I can to help out.
Right on. And yeah, likewise for me. Jace is the pronghorn master, but I might be able to help you with HuntStand or any other questions you have. So hit me up. So we're gonna rip through some of these. Let's just do these rapid fire, Jace.
Sure.
Came in during registration from Sean C. Any tips for crawling with your bow in your hand?
Yeah. First and foremost, get a good pair of leather gloves. The cactus in the country will absolutely eat you up. Everything out there is going to poke you, pod you, whatever. Get some knee pads. And what I do is I extend my right arm or left arm, depending on what I'm crawling on with, and I set that bow as far as I can out in front of me. And if you're shooting a really good bow that you have a lot of confidence in and you're in sage country, I throw it. I did say that. I will throw it into the next sage bush and go up on it because sometimes I crawl for a long ways and it gets exhausting. Another thing you can do, I'm not a huge fan of it, but you can strap it to your pack. If you are covering a lot of ground and you know that you have to get a long ways before that shot may materialize, I'll go ahead and use my pack. I'll strap it to the back like I would if I was walking out of the elk woods, and I'll crawl with it that way.
Right on, man. We might have breezed over this, but Todd S asked us, what is the best state for OTC tags? You hate to say this.
Colorado.
You guys are lucky you attended this event because he might not tell the whole world about that. Rick K. This is a really interesting one. I'm not sure you'll be able to answer it, but we'll challenge you.
Good.
Determine the size of a doe when it's all alone.
Ooh, that's a super awesome question. Honestly, I do have kind of an answer to that because when I am looking to harvest a doe, I'm looking for a mature doe and I'm looking for one with some size to her for more meat purposes. And so if I can get her standing next to a buck That's one of the easiest ways to tell. I'll be able to compare her size directly to the buck. If not, most of the time, does aren't by themselves. Occasionally they are. I'm not saying they're not, but if they're in a herd group, I can go through and use my optics, going back to those quality optics, and start comparing body sizes to that doe that I think is big and the other does inside the herd.
I figured we probably couldn't stump you. Ripping through the live chat here to answer a couple of questions. First of all, you guys are really a polite group here. So many people,
Yeah.
thanks, and congratulations to the winners and all that stuff, and excited for season. So thanks for the energy, guys. We really appreciate it. It keeps us motivated to keep doing this. And also your grace for congratulating the winners. You keep
Yeah.
coming to these things and pay attention to what we got going on HuntStand. We give away stuff all the time. So keep throwing your name in the ring. But what do we got here? Worth Osgood. You get to hunt only one species for the rest of your life, pronghorn or turkeys.
I know this person, and that's horrible. That's below the belt, Worth. That let's try to keep the gloves up. Okay. Pass. No. Pronghorn.
Well, we know what my answer is, but
We do. It's opposite of mine. A lot of that
it's
just
so
has to
close
do
though,
with
dude. It's so close.
it's just they're just so intriguing. And I'm a turkey fanatic. That's a close second, but I gotta go with my speed goats for sure as number one.
Jimmy B in the chat here. Do antelope get CWD?
Ooh, not that I'm aware of.
Same here. I don't think there's
Not
any
that I'm
evidence.
aware of. Again, that's not one I'm going to say 100% hard no, but I have talked to several biologists, and I actually talked to a professor at a university last year, and not that he was aware of. In fact, he doesn't believe that they can get it.
I think that's correct as far as I know, and there are no transportation regulations surrounding
There are none.
pronghorn, which there are with deer and elk, mule deer, whitetail,
Yep.
and elk. Most states now
Yep.
are in an agreement
Most
not
of your
to get
ungulates will have it, not that I know of on pronghorn.
That's right. John L in the chat here. Why are antelope racks generally bigger in an area of New Mexico versus other Western states, or is that a myth?
It's not a myth. If you want to kill a giant, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, friends. Those are kind of the trio of states that I don't pretend to know why. I will credit it back to genetics. A lot of times I think there's just a good genetic strain there. But if you're looking to go 90, if you're looking to go into the high 80s, the unicorns are out there, but those states tend to have more of them.
This was one that came in during registration from David B. What would you consider as an average shot distance on most pronghorn hunts? And he didn't specify, but let's talk archery and rifle.
Archery, 54 yards is a magical number for me. I journal everything. I journal after every hunt. I journal after every kill. The book of mine has lots of journal entries, and that 54 yards, for some reason, I've just shot a lot of antelope at 54. That's because I spot and stalk and run a decoy a lot. I have killed a lot at water, and those are, you're depending on how close you put the blind, I'm usually 30 to 40 because I like to give them that grace and that space between confidence in my shooting. A rifle, I'm going to say 300. I'm just going to kind of go with that. 300 is a great expectation to have in your mind. If you can kill at 300, you're going to be successful.
Tim N is new to pronghorn hunting. What state offers not only the best chance at a tag, but also success? And I would add to that to kind of lead your answer by considering the ability to shoot does.
I'm going to I already, nobody can say I didn't throw Colorado in the mix, but because I already did. But I'm going to say Wyoming, honestly, just because of a sheer number standpoint, and there's still tags are fairly easily obtainable in a lot of areas. So also South Dakota deserves some talk in that respect. As does Colorado, Montana. There's a lot of them, but I would have to say Wyoming is one of my favorites.
More pronghorn in Wyoming than people. I think that's still true, isn't it?
I believe it is. Their numbers have, gone down. That's why it has become more limited. But tags are still pretty easy to come by. Again, if you do your research and you pay attention, and you're active on that state or any state's game and fish website, and you pay attention, these people have done a great job of putting out tons of information, even hunt planners, and you can go in there and find areas where you can obtain a tag.
Single pin or multi-pin?
Okay, so I was hardcore single pin forever. I'm still a single pin, but now as these companies have started to make multiple pins in a vertical position, my go-to is right here. It's Spot Hog's triple stack, and you have 3 pins set in a vertical position. So you have an uncluttered side housing, just like you would with a single pin. And always dial to the yard. When you're hunting pronghorn, you want to be able to dial, especially as you get out to more extended distances and for your practice sessions.
We're gonna kill the Q&A here and mosey on with our evenings. We want to thank you guys so much for showing up. We will be putting this out on our YouTube channel. So any of you who missed it or want to review it, it'll be available probably tomorrow, but if not, sometime this week. And we just can't thank you enough for coming. So head over to huntstand.com, check me and Jace out on social media, find HuntStand on social media. It's easy to find. And I will end it with a comment, not a question, from one of our guests here this evening, Jim Q. And it's a tale of woe that plenty of us will experience as pronghorn hunters. He said he stalked one a mile to come up behind him, bedded on a hillside. But by the time he got to the top of the hill, he was gone. I saw him half a mile away, staring dead at me. Sounds about right.
Yep, I've only had that happen about 5,280 times. So I feel your pain, and we'll have it happen another 100 times this year.
Oh, that's so true. Well, thanks a lot, Jace.
Thank you guys. Thanks for everybody that got on and asked questions and stuck around, and appreciate it.
Right on, man. We'll talk to you later.
All right, guys.